Section 10.5 is deductive reasoning. Our goal is to use the law of detachment and the law of syllogism. On page 622, we have in the solve it, you drew a conclusion based on several facts. You used deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, sometimes called logical reasoning, is the process of reasoning logically from given statements or facts to a conclusion. Given true statements, you can use deductive reasoning to make a valid or true conclusion. The law of detachment says if the hypothesis of a true conditional is true, then the conclusion is true. So if P then Q is true and P is true, then Q is true. To use the law of detachment, identify the hypothesis of a given true conditional. If the second given statement matches the hypothesis of the conditional, then you can make a valid conclusion. This piece right here is the most important part to look for with the law of detachment. The second given statement has to match the hypothesis of the conditional. Otherwise, you cannot make a conclusion. Example 1 has 3 parts. Says, what can you conclude from the given true statement? For part A, we have if a student gets an A on a final exam, then the student will pass the course. Felicia got an A on her history final exam. First, we need to identify the hypothesis of the conditional. A student gets an A on the final exam. Then we can check to see if our second statement matches the hypothesis. Felicia got an A on her history final exam. This does indeed match. Therefore, we can make a valid conclusion. Our conclusion will be that Felicia will pass her history course because if she gets an A, she will pass the course, and she did get an A, so she will pass the course. Part B says if a ray divides an angle into 2 congruent angles, then the ray is an angle bisector. Ray RS divides angle ARB, so that angle ARS is congruent to angle SRB. Again, we need to identify the hypothesis. A ray divides an angle into 2 congruent angles and check to see if the second statement matches. This says ray RS divides angle ARB, so that angle ARS and angle SRB are congruent angles. This does indeed match our hypothesis. Although it's not necessary, it may be helpful for you to draw a picture or a diagram to go with your second statement. Because our second statement matched our hypothesis, we can make the valid conclusion that ray RS is an angle bisector. For part C, we have if 2 angles are adjacent, then they share a common vertex. Angle 1 and angle 2 share a common vertex. For this one, our hypothesis is 2 angles are adjacent, and then our second statement actually matches the conclusion that angle 1 and 2 share a common vertex. Therefore, we cannot use the law of detachment because the second statement did not match the hypothesis. So you cannot make a conclusion. The information in the second statement about angle 1 and angle 2 does not tell you if the angles are adjacent. The second statement does not match the hypothesis of the given conditional, so you cannot use the law of detachment. Angle 1 and angle 2 could be vertical angles since vertical angles also share a common vertex. The work for this problem is written out on the next few slides. And now I would like you to try homework number 1 on page 623. If possible, use the law of detachment to make a conclusion. If it is not possible to make a conclusion, tell why. Problem number 1 says if a doctor suspects her patient has a broken bone, then she should take an x-ray. Dr. Numba suspects Lily has a broken arm.